The Nile's floodwaters had receded 3 moons past, exposing wild vegetation along the riverbanks where Kayamwaset's family foraged. His wife spotted the climbing vines first, heavy with green ridged pods that resembled the bottle gourds from their garden. She plucked them eagerly, filling her woven basket, while their son, Amenhotep, chased locusts through the papyrus stalks. That evening, the pods split open in the cooking fire, revealing scarlet seeds nestled in sticky pulp. Amenhotep gnawed the bitter flesh from the rind, his face twisting at the acrid taste before his mother sweetened it with date syrup. The family ate by oil lamp light, scraping the last morsels as bronze spoons clinked against clay bowls. Amenhotep's shriek pierced the night. His small body convulsed on the packed earth floor, fingers clawing at his distended belly. White foam bubbled between his lips, tinged pink with blood from where he'd bitten his tongue. Kayamwaset held his thrashing son while his wife ran barefoot through the darkness, screaming for the priest-physician. Before dawn broke over the mud-brick dwellings, the mother's screams pierced the darkness, summoning the village healer from his sleep. Oil lamps flickered as neighbours gathered outside the family's home, their shadows dancing against walls, while inside, the child's small frame convulsed on the packed earth floor, green bile streaming from his mouth. The healer pressed willow bark poultices against the boy's burning skin, forced bitter wormwood tea between clenched teeth, yet nothing stemmed the violent spasms. Each breath rattled like pebbles in a gourd. The child's fingernails darkened to purple-black, his lips cracked and bleeding from constant retching, while his mother clutched his trembling hand. By sunrise, the convulsions ceased. Women wrapped the small corpse in rough linen strips, their practiced movements masking confusion. No fever had swept through, no plague marks appeared. The healer examined the vomit-stained floor, finding only half-digested seeds and pulp, unremarkable to his eyes, yet somehow wrong, somehow deadly. The same bitter seeds that had poisoned an Egyptian child now lay scattered across a wooden table in Athens, decades later. Hippocrates' apprentice, Dionysios, ground them between bronze mortars until black powder stained his fingertips. Outside, a mangy street dog lapped desperately at a clay bowl, the physician's first test subject for his new purgative. The dog's legs buckled within minutes. Yellow foam bubbled from its muzzle as its body twisted against the cobblestones. Dionysios scribbled furiously on papyrus, documenting each convulsion, each hemorrhage of blood from the animal's rectum. When the thrashing stopped, he measured a pinch of the powder, barely enough to cover a bronze coin, and mixed it into dark wine. His dying patient, a merchant ravaged by dropsy, gulped the mixture gratefully. The man's fingernails darkened to purple-black within heartbeats. His eyes rolled white. A wet rattle escaped his throat as his chest seized, ribs straining against yellowed skin. Dionysios pressed 2 fingers to the merchant's neck, feeling the pulse flutter once, twice, then nothing. The Greek physician's experiments had travelled far beyond Athens, carried by merchants who whispered of the bitter seeds that could fell a man faster than hemlock. In Rome, where poisoning had become an art among the patrician class, a woman named Livia crushed the black seeds between marble and pestle, her knuckles white with pressure. Each morning for 7 days she practiced the motion, 3 drops of honeyed wine to mask the acrid powder. Her husband's bronze cup sat heavy in her palm as dawnlight crept through the villa's columns. The slaves had withdrawn. His footsteps echoed on limestone, drawing closer to where she waited, the mixture already swirling amber white. The cup touched his lips. A pause, then the long swallow. Within moments, his fingers began their telltale dance. First a tremor, then violent spasms that sent the bronze clattering across marble. Foam, tinged pink with blood, bubbled between his clenched teeth as his body convulsed against the cold floor, his toga twisting around limbs that no longer obeyed. The bronze cup slipped from the Roman nobleman's fingers 3 days later, wine pooling across mosaic tiles as another victim seized his stomach. Word spread through the forum like smoke. The emperor's sudden collapse had not been isolated. Palace slaves whispered of a pattern. First the trembling hands, then the grey pallor creeping across noble faces, finally the violent cramping that bent even the strongest senator double. The imperial physician pressed his ear against the emperor's chest, counting the irregular heartbeats while bitter foam collected at the ruler's lips. Guards dragged in every cook, every taster, every servant who had touched the feast. The half-eaten fig lay forgotten as investigators seized wine amphoras, bread loaves, honeyed dates, yet found nothing. The emperor's fingernails darkened to black while his body convulsed against the cold marble. Behind silk curtains, a senator's wife ground something between her teeth, a single bitter seed she had hidden beneath her tongue during the banquet. Her husband had fallen minutes after the emperor, writhing beside his dining couch. She spat the masticated pulp into her palm, studying the yellowish fragments as screams echoed through palace corridors. The balsam apple's poison had found its way into Rome's highest chambers. The emperor's physicians had failed. Now, 300 miles from Rome's marble halls, a different kind of practitioner bent over his workbench. Iron tongs gripped the balsam apple's scarlet fruit as he crushed it between stones, releasing juice that hissed against the metal. The alchemist's fingers, already stained yellow from decades of handling toxic substances, trembled with anticipation. Glass retorts bubbled over charcoal flames. Drop by drop, the distillate fell into a collecting vessel, each bead of liquid catching the lamplight like molten amber. The stench forced him to breathe through linen wrapped around his face. His notes, scrawled in cipher across parchment, recorded how the extract corroded copper coins and turned fresh milk black within moments of contact. He decanted the final product into a thumb-sized vial, sealing it with melted wax. The yellowed fluid inside seemed to pulse in the flickering light. Outside his laboratory door, hoofbeats announced the arrival of his patron's messenger. The alchemist's lips moved in silent calculation. 3 drops would purge, 5 would paralyze, 7 would ensure the victim never rose again. The same bitter knowledge that medieval alchemists hoarded in their shadowed chambers now spread through common villages like plague itself. 3 bodies lay twisted in the market square of Rothenburg, foam dried white on their blue lips. The blacksmith's wife had collapsed first, then the miller's son, and finally the young priest who'd blessed their morning bread. Eyes turned to Margaret's cabin at the forest edge, where bundles of strange plants hung from every rafter. The mob found her grinding seeds in a stone mortar, crimson juice staining her fingernails. They seized her recipe book first, pages filled with drawings of twisted vines and skull-marked warnings. A torch touched parchment, smoke curled. Rough hands dragged her through mud toward the stake while flames consumed centuries of herbal wisdom. She screamed not of innocence, but of ignorance. The real killer grew wild in their own gardens, its bright fruits mistaken for harmless gourds. The villagers bound her wrists with hemp rope, deaf to her warnings about the bitter vine. Centuries had passed since those medieval pyres consumed innocent herbalists, yet the mysterious deaths persisted across Europe. Dr. Pierre Malpighi pressed his scalpel into another corpse's swollen belly, releasing a putrid gas that made his assistant retch. The victim, a wealthy merchant's wife, had collapsed 3 days prior, her screams echoing through the Marais district before violent convulsions silenced her forever. Malpighi's fingers traced the peculiar scarring along the stomach lining, matching patterns he'd observed in 12 previous cadavers. His laboratory overflowed with dried specimens. Every gourd, cucumber and melon from Paris's botanical gardens lay dissected on wooden boards. Ancient texts from Constantinople spoke of bitter fruits that corrupt the bowels, but their crude illustrations depicted nothing recognizable among French flora. Rain hammered against his window as Malpighi hunched over a weathered Arabic manuscript, translating each word by candlelight. The text described a vine bearing scarlet eggs filled with black seeds of death, cultivated in distant lands beyond the Mediterranean. His quill scratched desperate notes, while another victim's body cooled in the morgue below, the poison's identity remaining tantalizingly out of reach. The bitter irony of famine struck hardest in the autumn of 1816, when the year without a summer left German towns stripped of grain. Where once the Parisian surgeon had puzzled over distended corpses, now entire communities faced starvation. Wild vines bearing scarlet fruits draped themselves across abandoned orchards, their seeds glistening like rubies through translucent flesh. Mothers sent children scrambling through frost-brittle hedgerows, filling wicker baskets with anything resembling food. The balsam apple's ripe pods split at the touch, revealing sticky orange aerials that tasted faintly sweet. Within hours, the first child doubled over beside the well, yellowish foam bubbling between blue lips as his mother's screams pierced the morning air. By the third day, the cobblestones ran slick with bile, bodies convulsed in doorways, their bowels emptying uncontrollably while neighbours pressed rags soaked in well water against burning foreheads. The church bells fell silent. The bell ringer lay sprawled beneath his ropes, fingers still clutching 3 half-eaten crimson pods, seeds scattered like black pearls across stone. The screams from the German town square had long faded into memory when a travelling merchant's cart rolled past an overgrown field marker. His wheels crunched against dried vines that twisted through the ancient boundary stones, their red fruits splitting open to reveal sticky crimson aerials that glistened like fresh blood in the afternoon's sun. The merchant's grandson hopped down to examine the weathered limestone tablet half buried in the undergrowth. His small fingers traced the carved spiral tendrils, the death's head, the crossed bones beneath. Local farmers avoided this corner of the valley, muttering prayers when forced to pass, though none could recall precisely why their grandfathers had planted warning stones here. By harvest time, new settlers had cleared the field for barley, tossing the old marker into a pile of rubble. The bitter vines crept back each spring, their fruits hanging heavy among the grain stalks, waiting. Only the village crone still whispered the old words when children strayed too close, the fruit that burns twice.